everybody, what's up and welcome back. So I hope you've enjoyed the shirt because you're going to see it a lot. Just kidding, just kidding. So today we're going to be talking about the Lewiston-Clark Valley murders or disappearances. So these occurred between 1979 and 1982 in the Lewiston-Clarkston metropolitan area of northern Idaho. Why did I try to say Ohio? Of Idaho. And they were unsolved murders and disappearances. So law enforcement investigators have identified 4 victims and possibly a 5th that are connected to one single unnamed suspect. So this is a unsolved, unidentified, and set of true crime. So, let's get into today's true crime case.
I would be up waiting for you if you had to leave.
Also, if you're new, I'm Liz, I'm your host. This is Creating Crime Time, where I sit down, I talk about a true crime case, and sometimes I create art at the same time. Also, if I talk too fast, I'm super sorry, that's just how I talk. I try to slow it down, but sometimes it's just like, man, I can't get it out fast enough. Yeah, so, as I said, the case that we are going to be talking about happened between 1979 and 1982. So we're going back, we're doing more of a vintage crime feel. If you can tell, the past few ones have been in the 80s. We're kind of doing 70s and 80s, 90s, all that jazz. So that night, I tend to like the older cases because there's a lot more written down, whereas new age cases, it's all over the media. Alright, so the Lewis-Clark Valley murders. So let's kind of like go into all of the people that are involved in this. So Christina White, or Christina Lee White, she went by Chrissy. She disappeared on the 20th of April of 1979 from Asotin, Washington. And this is after she attended a parade with a friend. So she had returned to the friend's house and telephoned her mom saying that she felt sick. So her mother advised her to return home on her bike, but Chrissy never appeared and has not been seen since she was at the friend's house. So, and the bike that she rode has never been found. No, it's never been found. So, Kristen David, a University of Idaho student. So, Kristen Noel David, she was 22. She disappeared on June 26th of 1981 while she was biking from Moscow, Idaho to Lewiston. Her dismembered remains would be recovered on the 4th of July of the same year from the Snake River near Clarkston, Washington, which Snake River John Doe, I believe that the Snake River John Doe somehow correlates to this, but I mean, that's just me. That's just because I read this stuff so often, I kind of like attribute one thing to the other, so it's something that I'm like, man, does that go together? Does it? Does it? That, and he was discovered in 1982, so this falls along the same line of things. He was literally found at the mouth of the Snake River, so I believe that he is involved, is part of this case. Anywho, I digress. I did a video of him. If you want to look at it, I'll put it in a card. So, yeah. So, Kristen David her body was found dismembered near the Snake River, in the Snake River near Clarkston, Washington. So, then there's a Lewiston Civic Theater incident that happens. So, Christina Diane Nelson. I know, very similar name to Kristen David, but she's 21 and her stepsister Jacqueline Ann Miller, who went by Brandy, is 18. They disappeared while walking from Christina's apartment to a grocery store in downtown Lewiston, and this happens on September 12th of 1982. On the same night, Stephen R. Pearsall, 35 at the time, He's an employee of the Lewiston Civic Theater, located at 8th Street and 6th Avenue. He went missing after going to the theater to use its laundry facilities. Pearsall and Christina worked together at the theater and both attended the Lewis-Clark State College, and they were neighbors. Well, the remains of Nelson and Miller were found on March 19th of 1984 in a rural area, and this was about 35 miles from Lewiston, near Kendrick, Idaho. Why do I keep trying to say Ohio? Near Kendrick, Idaho. Investigators were unable to determine a cause of death for Nelson, but they determined that Brandy had been murdered. And her neighbor, Stephen Pearsall, has never been located. That too, the day that she's found. So if you think about it, let me pull this back up, okay? Let me pull this back up. So they go missing on September 12th of 1982. This John Doe we have is discovered on June 16th of 1982. Why haven't they put this all together? This is what I don't get. Granted, this is in Nez Perce County. Every time I say that, I say it wrong. So in Nez Perce County, like, anywho, so their remains were found. They determined that Brandy was murdered and Steve was never located. Investigators initially suspected that Stephen may have been involved in Christina and Brandy's abduction and murders, but investigators later stated that all three probably had been in or near the theater at the time they vanished, and were likely the victims of the same killer. So, 1984, the Idaho State Police believe that Otis Toole was the killer, and he had implicated himself in the murder of Kristen David, and was their strongest suspect. But he also added 2 other men into the confession of the crime, so this kind of like threw them for a loop. In 2009, a retired Lewiston police detective who had interviewed Toole at the time stated that he ruled him out as a suspect, that Toole wasn't a viable witness, he wasn't a viable suspect, no, he didn't do anything. So, backtrack back to 1995, Lewiston police announce that Nelson, Miller, and Pearsall were all murdered together inside the Lewiston Civic Theater by another theater employee. This unnamed suspect, who was present at the theater that night, especially the night of the trio's disappearance, had also lived in the home in which Christina White disappeared in 1979. So this person lived in the friend's house that Christina White went to. So all of this kind of ties together. So in 1998, authorities in Spokane, Washington, who were investigating the killings, would later be attributed to Robert Lee Yates. So he's another fun one that eventually I'll talk about. And they all interviewed the same suspect. So in 1998, Lewiston police stated that the belief of Kristen David's murder was linked to another Lewiston area murders and disappearances. In 2009, a report stated that Kristen David had worked for a time at the Lewiston Civic Theater and may have known the same theater employee that's suspected in the murder of Christina, Brandy, and Stephen. So they all, finally it's all coming together. They all believe that it's part of the same case. In 2011, a 53-minute documentary examining the case, which is called Confluence, was released. Watch it, it's great. In 2018, a 2-part documentary series examining this case called Cold Valley aired on Investigation Discovery Network. And there's a Soton County police detective who appeared on the program, and this detective reaffirmed links that police had made earlier between Chrissy and Stephen's disappearances and the murders of Christina and Brandy. So with the stated information that they were likely working with the same killer. So they all knew him, or them, it. They all knew it, okay? The program also linked an unnamed suspect with 3 other deaths in and outside the region, including an unsolved Chicago murder from 1963. So it really tied a whole lot of stuff together, if you will, and brought it all together. So that, my friends, is the crazy Lewiston-Clark Valley murders and disappearances. As I stated, I believe that the Snake River John Doe is related to this case. But yeah, it's this one. That one's kind of weird because we have some victims and we have 2 disappearances. So we have 2 people that are missing and 2 that have been found, 3 that have been found. So it's like, what is going on? Yeah, that one was a weird one that I found, and I really wanted to cover because I thought it was different from what I normally do. Like that, and another podcast that I just started listening to, which is called Jensen and Holes. They actually covered this case and talking about how they believe they're all connected. Yeah, it's just this case is so weird. So weird. Yeah, so basically, when Kristen was found, a man was fishing on the Snake River and he saw a trash bag floating down the water. He opened it, and this is when he found the headless human torso and the leg. So her body was viciously mutilated. Eventually there's 3 more bags that were located, and each contained body parts. A dismembered head, arms, a part of leg, all were wrapped tightly in newspaper. So this sounds a lot like the Cleveland torso murders, if that doesn't ring your bells, where there's a few of the body parts were wrapped in newspaper. And this is often associated with a person that's familiar with being a butcher or butchering meat. So backgrounds have a lot to do with these cases. If you don't investigate a person's background correctly, you're not going to figure out how they are exactly, how their background attributes to a case. So, yeah. And Stephen had gone to the theater to do laundry. Now this is after, so this too has a lot of here and there. So I've read things where he went to the theater to do laundry, and also there's another one where Stephen went to a party with his girlfriend, and around midnight his girlfriend dropped him off at the theater because he wanted to practice playing the clarinet. There's a lot of weird things here and there. There's some things that are strange, some things that are not strange but off, and some things that just feel right. This is one of the things that just doesn't feel right, that something is weird about this. Yeah. And also when Christina and Brandy were found, their remains were skeletonized, so they had been there for a while. Yeah. There were clothes and personal items found with them, and nearby their bodies there was cords. That was cords that are similar to a clothesline, and this was found near the body, and their clothing and stuff like this, and that's how they determined that they were Christina and Brandy. Yeah, so they have done a forensic facial composite of Chrissy, and it's been aged to look like what she would look like. So they have kept that up to date. The same thing with Stephen, although I will say that Stephen at this time, he would be in his 70s around this time if he was to be found. So about 72, 73 years old. So if he was to be found, I mean, or if he isn't to be found, you know what I mean. He's aged progressively, so things might be a little bit different for him. But yeah, that is the strange case of the Lewis Clark disappearances and murders. I know it's really strange, it's really weird, it's really all over the place, but I wanted to cover something really strange and weird and all over the place. So you're welcome, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.
A lifetime if you were at sea. I just wanna